Hey, so today we're going to talk about Rosaroll and Grisetti and their fencing book and some cool actions that we kind of see in there. So at the end of the 17th century, we still have the Italians publishing fencing books, still with the rapier or dueling sword, if you want to kind of look at it that way. We have Marcelli at the end of the 17th century, as well as Damazzo, and at the beginning of the 18th century, we have Ventura. After that, the Italians don't really publish many books at all. We're kind of in like a little bit of a dry period for Italian fencing. Part of this is because of the influence the French school started having, thanks to Louis XIV. He was a very influential monarch in France and across Europe. Everyone wanted to bring in French masters, but also wanted to just adopt French culture. So the French fencing school kind of overtakes the Italians at this point, history in the 18th century. And then you get into the 19th century, we have Rosaroll and Grisetti published their book, The Science of Fencing, in 1803. And this is kind of the beginning, so it's kind of like towards the end of the Napoleonic War. Where nationalism is starting to get a little bit on the rise. Countries are trying to have a little bit more of a self-identity. Rosaroll Grisetti published their book, which kind of creates a little bit of a resurgence for the Italian fencing school. What's interesting about this school is it's really a beautiful blend of the earlier rapier fencing books with what we think about with more classical Italian fencing with foils later on. So a lot of the way they describe actions in the book is very rapier-esque. Everything's more about hand position than guards, but the hand position is very much like rapier. But the guards and parries aren't exactly what you would see if you did classical Italian fencing with Italian foil or epee. They also keep the martial aspect of fencing in their book. They have the offhand, use of the offhand out in front instead of back and behind like we see more classical fencing. They do offhand parries. They do some cuts, though this is very much a thrust-centric oriented weapon. Any kind of cuts is going to be to the bare skin, like the cheeks, or if someone had rolled up sleeves, you could cut them or slice their arm. But you're not seeing the big heaving cuts that you would with rapier or even side sword or saber. They also have disarms, grapples, pummel strikes, all that good stuff that would maybe be very handy in a duel, but is not legal when you think about fencing in the cell or doing classical fencing. Meanwhile, we see actions in their book and in their system that's a little bit more foil-esque, more classical fencing-ish, if you want to think about it. They have their parries and engagements here in what you can think about as a low fourth. In modern classical Italian, we'd call this first. They call it anchor because when the blades are crossed, they say it looks like an anchor. If you're coming from the more French side school of things, this would be a septime or a high septime. Either way, this action that doesn't really appear a ton in earlier rapier books is now starting to make its way in this system. We have Sforzos or expulsions, which you don't really see too much in the 17th century rapier fencing texts, but appears in their book and is a classical action on the blade for the Italian school. Also, they talk about fencing in the cell. They talk about how you don't usually want to wear fencing masks because it's not what you would use in a duel, but it's something that was around and was used in cells. So you got this interesting balance between the training folks, not just for the sports side of fencing for a good exercise and part of your military or nobility education, but you also still see it as like this dueling aspect, right? There was still duels happening, and there was a martial aspect that could keep you alive in a duel. So we got this interesting side of a little bit of a divergence between sport and martial art here, and it kind of both lives in Scorza and Grisetti's book. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the weapon that they use. So in the 17th century, we have the rapier. This is more of a transitional rapier from the mid-1650s. This was made by Jesse Belsky. Thank you very much. That I commissioned based off a 1650s German transitional rapier. And then get over to the Smara, which is the sword here in the middle, and then you got the Italian foil at the far end. So you can kind of see the hilts here start to kind of shrink a little bit. The crossguard, even the crossguard of my transitional rapier is pretty small, and earlier rapiers that would be a little bit wider, just for extra blade control and capture. But the blades definitely start to get thinner as we go from rapier to the Smara to the Italian foil. Now in this period, they did have both of these weapons. The Smara was basically what they would recommend for training in the cell, like when you're doing your drills or working with the fencing master. It is a heavier foil with a stiffer blade. Still had the knuckle bow, which is very useful still with dueling. Meanwhile, we have here the Italian foil. Doesn't have the knuckle bow, much lighter, and this is something they would probably recommend you use when bouting or free playing in the cell. As described by Rosaroll and Grisetti, is to do what we think is more of a classical Italian grip, in which you have two fingers now wrapped around the ricasso. So now you have your middle finger in the corner of the crook there of the ricasso and the crossguard. Your index finger kind of loosely wrapped around on top of that, and your thumb on the back edge. And then you got your ring finger and your pinky loose around the grip and the pommel underneath your hand. Oftentimes, these would also be strapped to your hand. The sword would be strapped to your hand or wrist. This could be done either with a handkerchief or a cord. The nice thing about the handkerchief is that if you don't have a glove on, it would give you extra protection on the back of your hand from incidental slices. There are tons of different ways of strapping the weapon to your arm. I'm not going to get into here, but I will put in the description of the video links to a blog post that shows several different ways, which is really cool. When you get into more modern classical Italian fencing, we use a wrist strap in which the pommel gets kind of lashed in there to keep it nice and tight. This gives you extra control of the weapon in case it tries to get knocked out of your hand. It's not going flying across the room, but it also gives you a stronger lever, right? Again, swords are levers. It gives you a stronger lever so you can kind of bully your opponent's blade around a little bit more than they can. All right, now we're just going to quickly look at the stance as described by Rosaroll and Grisetti here. So we kind of start off in just a traditional first position here. We're going to basically bring our front foot 1.5 to 2 shoe lengths in front of our back foot here. We're going to keep a nice central stance here, nice even weight between both legs. Blade is kind of setting with the hand in third and fourth position. Backhand, instead of being way back here like we would do in foil, is in front of the chest. So we got the hand nice and parallel to the floor. Left hand, or offhand I should say, in front of your chest, so it's still around to help with defense as need be. Okay, next up, we're going to look at a few different fun techniques that we can use with the Smarra here that come from Rosaroll and Grisetti. These actions you can also do with foil, and you can also do with rapier, depending on the weight of your rapier. It's kind of, some of these are kind of unique specifically to the weapon, but I do like to try to bring some of these techniques both forward and backwards in my own fencing. All right, so our first action we're going to look at here is the Cartoccio. The Cartoccio is a low line attack. It's kind of like the Passata Sotto, but where the Passata Sotto is a counter attack in which your opponent is attacking you. The Cartoccio is a forward lunge where we are striking our opponent. I'm going to have Gavin here get on guard here. This is actually especially good against someone who has their sword a little bit higher and is really kind of exposing the flank here. Maybe attacking by the glide up high is going to be tough because he can just raise his sword to protect it. Or for whatever other reason, but his flank is nice and wide open, so I can kind of use this idea or this targeting to hit that. You can take a rest here for a second. A couple little keys here is when we're going for this attack, we want to get really low, and you're going to turn your hand into first, just like in rapier, so the knuckles will be up. You want to really carry the body low, so the closer you can get your chest to your sword side, lead side leg, the better. You want your head underneath your hilt. If I'm popping up, Gavin will get hit, but he might be able to take my eye out at the same time. Not good for either one of us. And I want my offhand on the outside of my face, just in case something happens. I got that part of my face and cheek relatively safe here. So we're going to look at a few different ways we can use the Cartoccio. As the student here, I'm going to step in and engage Gavin's blade here on the outside line in third. Now from here, I'm going to basically just do a little bit of a disengage with my point to aim it underneath, get my hand into first, and lunge. Boom. So a few things here. I'm aiming just underneath his armpit, which is a great place to hit. It also means that if he tries dropping his sword at this point, I have steel in the way. And again, I want my face, my offhand on the outside of my face, just in case he does slip off. I have something kind of in the way from me getting sliced. These aren't big cutters, but they can slice a little bit. So we don't need to super worry about the slice, but we don't want to completely ignore the fact here either. So that's a very simple way we can use that. Just engage on the outside and then strike underneath the arm into the rib cage underneath. We can also get there from the high inside line. So Gavin's back on guard. In this case, I'm going to engage on the inside. If he contests the line and kind of pushes me here, I can now just do a little bit of a mezzacavazione or half disengage, get my hand into first, and again, lunge nice and low with my hand up high, head underneath my hilt to protect myself. For our next action, we can also do this off the Flanconade. So instead of the Flanconade of second, we're going to do the same motion, but we're not going to stop in two. We're going to keep rotate the hand into first while doing the Cartoccio. So it's a cool way of kind of combining a couple of different actions here into one sequence. Engage, transport down from 4 to 2. I'm going to keep going so my hand's now in first, and then glide on up. And again, my head is underneath my hilt, hand is still on the outside of my face. And I have even a little bit more opposition there, so it's one way of doing this with a little bit of blade opposition. Even if he slipped off, I still have some steel in the way. It's not perfect, but that's fencing. All right, for our next action, we're going to look at the Molinello. The Molinello, when we think about that usually in Italian fencing, is we're thinking about circular cuts, right? We're thinking about in saber or side sword or rapier, these big circular cuts. But these weapons don't really cut. They're really thrust-centric weapons. So the Molinello means something a little bit different in this case. In this case, the Molinello is an envelopment mixed in with a Flanconade. So we're basically engaging, drawing 1.5 circles into the glide to hit our opponent. Engage, envelop, and then finish with the Flanconade of that transport. We can also do this on the opposite line as well. This would be, so that one, last one was a Molinello of second. This one's a Molinello of fourth. He also will call this like the final attacking it called anchor. Again, in modern classical fencing, we'd call this an internal Flanconade or glide from first. French, it's more of a septime or high septime. But in this particular action, I'm going to engage on this high outside line, envelop, and then scoop once more down into his low inside line here. So I'm going to engage, envelop, get that transport, and then lunge. I can even heat my offhand here if I need to like push it away or kind of protect myself at the last second there. So one way you can practice this one, so I'll get Gavin back on guard, is you can relax the elbow just a little bit here, be a little bit nicer. Get the engagement, just practice your envelopments. Keep the tip a little bit high for me, boom. So in stops, I want the beginning and position of my envelopments to look exactly the same. And then I can work on my transport, so that flanconade, strike. Once you get it comfortable with those as separate pieces, then you can kind of add it in all together here, engage, envelop, and then with the flanconade. What's also nice about this, rest for a second, is that they talk about this being good against nocturnal assailants. So it's really hard to see your opponent. You engage their blade, it's dark. If they try to free their blade, you basically just doing a counter disengage to pick their weapon back up, and then you hit them with basically a flanconade. So if we look at that one nice and easy, it's dark out, I'm having trouble seeing Gavin. I engage, I start my envelopment, he disengages out of it. I can pick him back up anyways, and I can finish with my transport or my flanconade there. Let's step out. Boom, he disengages out, I pick him back up, and then go. So it has some nice utility there. They also show a Molinello as a parry riposte. So this is basically just doing a circular parry with a riposte by flanconade. So again, if he does nothing, I would just finish my Molinello, but he's going to attack as I start the envelopment. I'm just going to pick him up with that circular parry, and then I'll riposte with the transport. You might want to take a step back there so you don't bring the tip into your leg or body. That's going to be kind of an on-the-field decision as you're fencing. So we'll go nice and easy for these first few. Engage, he attacks, boom, I picked him up, and I can now finish with my transport. Same speed on that one. Good. Now we can go a little bit more at speed here. One more. And recover. All right, our last action here is going to be the Sforzo, or the Expulsion. This is a fun action. Again, we see this in the Smara book and system, but it's an action I like to bring back into my rapier game too. So in this action, it's a sliding beat. So I'm going to be sliding from my medium on down, from his weak down to his medium, and then we're throwing his blade away here. So what's nice about the Expulsion over the beat is that the beat can be disengaged in time. The Expulsion, in theory, if I do this really, really well, can't be disengaged out of because we have the blade contact, and the contact stays until I throw his blade away. We can do this in any line that we want, but we're going to just look at this one in third because it's one of my favorite ways of doing this one. And we'll kind of look at the details here as we kind of go. So I'll have Gavin on guard here. So I'm going to start off with my engagement here in third. I'm going to bring the arm back just a little bit, just a slight flexion of the arm. I'm going to slide on down my medium from his weak down to his medium. Think about throwing his blade, his point down to the ground behind him at a diagonal here. And then from here, if you do it really well, you get that nice shing kind of noise. I can stab his hand, or I can go for his body. Right, nice shing musical noise. It's very swashbuckly. Key here is I don't want to overdo the Expulsion, but I'm not throwing it down when now my tip is down, because now it's off to the races of who can get their point or sword back online here. So I'm thinking about stopping kind of where my point is still aimed at his target. His point is offline, and then I can go. In this version, I like to use the true edge. Gets me a nice, strong, powerful Expulsion. Oh, I also want to give a special shout out to Maestro Ryan Mank of Red Sun Classical Fencing. We just brought him up here recently for a workshop on the Smara, both Boston Academy Arms and Boston Armazzari. We teamed up to bring Maestro Mank up here to Boston to give us a nice little workshop on Grisetti, Scorza Grisetti's Smara. So he kind of inspired this video in this particular project. So if you're really interested in this weapon, one, pick up Chris Holzman's translation of the book. It's fantastic. And also hunt Maestro Mank down, see if you can bring him in for a workshop, because it's a lot of fun, and this is a great weapon. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little really quick overview of the Smara and some of the fun actions and a little bit of the history behind it. Again, this is a fun weapon. I've enjoyed playing around with it a lot, and I hope more people kind of get into it. It's a really kind of unknown part of fencing history, especially in the Italian school specifically, but it is a lot of fun. Thanks again to Maestro Mank for an incredible workshop that he gave a few weeks ago, and kind of jump-starting my interest and love for this particular weapon, and giving such a great workshop to everyone up here in Boston. Until next time, talk to you then.